Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions Deep Dive TV Podcast with my co-host Stacie here to talk about Under the Dome, Season 1, Episode 3, titled Manhunt. The episode's description reads as follows. After a deputy is killed, Big Jim organizes a search party to hunt down the culprit. Meanwhile, Joe and Nori continue to experience strange seizures. The episode was written by Adam Stein, wrote 8 episodes of this series, and served as a producer for 22 episodes, and a supervising producer on the series for 13 episodes. That would be the final season of the show. This is based on a book by Stephen King, and the episode was directed by Paul A. Edwards. This is his only stint on the series. 39 directorial credits in general, lots of TV, lots of genre shows. He was also a camera operator on 8 episodes of Lost, Man on Fire, Out of Time, and Enemy of the State. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a sport-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow, and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on our YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, so, Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode.
Okay, so, Manhunt. First of all, you were right. We are here now at the point where we're dealing with the whole Paul Randolph thing.
Yes.
In my mind, this was a couple episodes in the future still.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why I thought that. The episode titles are throwing me off.
Okay.
In my mind, this episode, Manhunt, was the one with the brothers.
Okay.
Like the 2 brothers that start going crazy and killing people, and they gotta be hunted down.
Yeah.
So that happens later.
Yes.
And then, and I think it's episode 5 is called Blue on Blue.
Yes.
And I thought that was the episode we're searching for Paul Randolph. Because that would make sense that would be the title of an episode where the cops are chasing down another cop.
All right.
But instead, that's the episode where Visitor's Day happens that in my brain was titled Visitor's Day.
Yeah, you were wrong about that. That's actually the episode where the military is going to blow them all up.
Right.
And fails.
And I remember the first time we talked about this season, we were confused why that episode was titled the way it was.
So
because it's not really about police.
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure that Ashley Wright gave us an answer to that question in that podcast. I think Blue on Blue is actually a reference to Friendly Fire. I could be wrong. I'll look back at that comment.
But it sounds like it means police versus police,
right.
which is what's happening in this episode.
Right.
So that's why I was so confused, is because I'm looking at the episode list, and my brain mixed up all these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, not only were you right that this is the episode that happens, you're also right that we took care of both of these cops and got them out of here very quickly.
Yes.
Too quickly. Because this is our last appearance of Kevin Sizemore as Paul Randolph.
Right.
Already in episode 3.
Right. Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So, yes, I am now fully on board with all of the things you had to say about Paul and Freddie and their whole story.
Gotcha.
Other than that, the episode, it's a little more action-y than I like. This whole episode was really like, hey, let's chase him down, and people with guns, and we're dealing with, we're learning about Barbie's military history, and there wasn't a lot of domey stuff happening. Mm-hmm. It was really all about the manhunt, and that's just not my thing. So this is a weaker episode for me compared to the other 2.
Yeah, I would say that this episode lands firmly in Okayville for me. I think there is some interesting things that are happening here. The dynamics between Barbie and Big Jim. Mm-hmm. Other than that, there's not a lot that I really particularly enjoy in this episode that much.
I did know this is the lowest rated season 1 episode on IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not alone with saying that this is not my favorite.
No. I definitely think it's one of the weaker ones of the 3 that we've covered so far. Do we have anything to say before diving in?
Just hit some cast stuff right off the top. No Dodie this week.
That is interesting.
She actually is in a lot less episodes than I thought she was. In my brain, she's in almost every episode this season, and she's not. We don't see her again until episode 5, and then she's sporadic after that as well. Also know Andrea. She's in less episodes. So that's not a surprise to me. And we meet 2 new characters this week, recurring characters, that is, in Ollie Dinsmore.
Yes.
And you were right that he appeared. You're very right on this series. Apparently, you have a much better memory of this show than I do.
I guess so.
And we're also going to meet Carter Thibodeau.
Yes.
So those are both going to be recurring characters this season. And of course, we have some one-off people as well to talk about. And seems to be the thing with this show is lots of uncredited people to talk about. So I have notes on all of that. I'm making my cast notes for this series way more complicated than any other series we cover, and I'm not exactly sure why, but that's how it's turning out.
Gotcha.
I think I'm covering it more like I do our movies than I do a typical, and that I guess that's just because that's what's listed on IMDb.
Yeah,
is they do list all of these uncredited listings, so I've been committing to it.
Well, there you go. All right, so diving in.
Oh, no, actually, I just saw, I have other notes here, some questions we asked last week.
Okay.
Where is this show filmed? I got an answer to that.
Yeah, okay.
It's filmed in North Carolina.
Ah, all right.
So different from any show we've ever covered, which is why we're not seeing any of the things we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
But I am seeing some recurring stuff in people's credits, like Sleepy Hollow.
Yep.
I'm seeing a lot. And there was a movie, what was that movie called? I'm not seeing it anywhere right now, but there's a particular movie that I don't know what it is, but I keep seeing it a lot. So obviously those are things that were filmed in the same place, right?
That's in North Carolina?
Right. That's what we get when, we start seeing the same credits on, especially all of like the one-off and uncredited people is, that these must all be filmed near each other.
Huh.
Because we see the same credits popping up over and over and over again.
It's interesting because I didn't really think that North Carolina had a filming community, but I guess I was wrong about that.
I mean, yeah, apparently there's stuff happening there. Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing that came to me this week, and I'm going to talk about it here because it doesn't necessarily play into this episode specifically, but I was questioning this like before taking this week's notes. What's the timeline that we're looking at? When are we, like, in the year? Because there's some conflicting things.
Okay.
So, we first met Angie and Junior. Angie told him they had a good summer. Mm-hmm. And he's going back to college in 3 days.
Right.
Which tells us it's August, the end of summer.
Yeah.
Right? Because usually college starts at the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
But then Joe and Ben are talking about how they're going to get out of their trig test tomorrow. Which tells us high school is already in session.
Yes.
And has been in session long enough that they're about to have a test.
Right.
So at least a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Unless they're both dumber than we think they are and they're taking summer school.
So, I didn't think of that. I guess that's a possibility that they're in summer school.
Right.
I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, I've never heard of a college that starts later than a high school.
No, usually college starts before high school.
Like weeks before.
Right.
So yeah, the fact that they're like, school's going to be canceled tomorrow means it's not summer.
Right.
Unless you're right, summer school. I hadn't thought about summer school. And then of course we have Nori.
Yes.
Who not only has, this whole deal of why did she come all the way from California to Maine to go to this camp.
She's going to a camp in the first place.
She's going to a camp.
Which generally happens during the summer.
At the beginning of summer.
Right.
Not like
the end
of the year. And my note was, when I was taking this note, is we're calling it a camp. It's never referred to as a school.
Right.
But then I amended my note because in this episode, we do call it a school.
Okay.
So it is possible she was going to it as like a reform school to spend a school year there. Like
Gotcha.
Like what's that called? Where you sleep there. Boarding school.
Yeah, okay.
But before this, in the last 2 episodes, we called it camp very specifically.
Right.
But in this episode, one of her moms does call it a school. So.
Gotcha.
I guess it could all still fit, but it was throwing me off trying to rectify all this information.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with you're right that the boys must be in summer school.
There you go.
Although Joe seems pretty smart.
Yes.
Maybe it's an advanced program, summer school.
Perhaps, but also I've known plenty of smart people who did not exactly do very well in school and could be slackers. I would count your husband among one of those people who perhaps did not do that great in high school. as far as academics was concerned, even though he's a really, really smart guy.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah. I think he had some... Anyway, moving along from that. But
but that's something I'm going to keep my ear out for, is mentions about school and dates and time. And because I feel like it remains inconsistent throughout the series.
I'm sure.
Because I feel like they're talking about winter starting soon or something.
In this episode?
Not in this episode, but like in this show. Like, I feel like they move the timeline more, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I wasn't actually noticing any of that.
It's something it's going to be on my radar now.
Okay.
And if they continue to say things that don't make sense, I'm going to put that on my problem list.
Okay. All right, so the episode begins with a party at night with the teens. Ben is skateboarding. Joe is watching the footage of Paul going nuts and Barbie taking him down. Some of the girls notice Joe's phone is working, and they're basically very impressed by this. But Joe, of course, he can't actually use his phone as a phone, but he can take pictures and video.
Right. So basically, the idea is he has electricity.
Ooh.
He's charging his phone. That's going to become important. The girls here are both credited. Girl number 1 is played by Katie Garfield. She's in one episode of Sleepy Hollow, one episode of Vampire Diaries. Girl number 2 is played by Chantel Rose. She was in 2 episodes of Fatal Attraction, the series. And these are the same 2 girls we're going to see later because they only gave 2 teenagers speaking parts.
Right. So Katie Garfield, is she related to a cat by any chance?
I doubt it.
Okay. So Barbie and... Oh, yeah, so they're speculating about what they'll do to the cop, what they're going to do to Paul. And Joe says that, cop killing is the worst that you can do. Though, I mean, would you really call that a cop killing? Because that was mostly an accident. He didn't try to kill Freddy.
He didn't kill him with intent, but he did still cause his death. And he was acting very ridiculously crazy.
Right.
And shooting in a crowd in the first place.
Right. So what would you charge for that? I mean, it wouldn't be an active homicide.
I mean, it's not like they have courts, so they can't, really charge him with anything.
Yeah,
but they
enough.
know he's a liability right now.
Yes.
That they got to get him off the street and get these guns out of his hand,
right.
for sure.
So Barbie and Julia drive to the police station. Barbie isn't thrilled with her driving. She wants to get there before Paul gets there, and she rubs salt in the wounds by saying she has a husband on the outside that she would want to see again.
And they talk about Julia's journalistic impulse, which is something we talked about last week.
Yep. She finds Linda taking in in Paul and tries to interview her. She seems annoyed. Doesn't answer any of Julia's questions.
Yeah, Julia's basically like, can you handle this? Are you capable of running things?
Right. And that's kind of a loaded question. What do you expect her to say?
Right.
But anyway, Jim comes out and confronts the crowd, who suddenly tries to become violent. Jim is basically acting like he's in charge now and says he will not appreciate any frontier justice. In other words, do not take matters into your own hands.
Yeah, the crowd is angry.
Yeah.
We have townsman number 2 in the crowd.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize we met him here.
Not townsman number... Okay. The credits are really wanky.
Yeah, he's actually, if I'm correct, this is Daryl. Or I'm sorry, this is Daryl Booker.
No, that's... Okay. That's Roger.
Right.
Who's credited as townsman number 1.
Okay.
In this scene, we have townsman number 2.
Gotcha.
Which doesn't make any sense because we're meeting him first.
Right.
But that's what it is because I compared the actors. And again, the fandom wiki was really helpful because they have pictures of all these people.
Yeah, I referenced it myself because I wanted to know who played Roger, who is not even credited as Roger, but as person number 2.
He's credited as number 1.
Right.
Townsperson number 2, who we meet in this scene, is Nick Basta.
Basta, okay.
Okay. And he was in one episode of Tales of the Walking Dead, one episode of NCIS New Orleans, and he just has some random line in this scene.
With Scott Bakula.
Scott Bakula, yes. Those are the types of credits we pull our mind to.
So Joe is talking to the girls when Nori happens upon Joe for the first time, asking about a charge-up, and Joe already looks smitten. She lies about her mom's and agrees to crash at Joe's place.
Well, yeah, she asks. She's like, can I crash there too? She's like, I'm just passing through town. I'm all alone.
Right.
And he's like, didn't they see you with those ladies at the fire? And she's like, nah, I never met them before.
I've never met them before in my life. which is what I would say to my daughter, like when she would ask, "Do I know you?" And I'm like, "Nope, never met you before." This is like when she was really young, and she got a kick out of that. But in the jail cell, Paul starts to pretend to get sick. Linda falls for this. He might as well go, I'm sorry, like your shoes are untied. Like that's the level of, acting that he's doing here.
Yeah.
Linda falls for this. Again, Linda's not a great cop. And he escapes while locking her in the cell. But I'm going to say that while I don't think she's a great cop, she does end up making up for this herself eventually.
And I didn't realize this until I just heard you explaining this scene. It mirrors a scene that happened in the book.
Okay.
And I think it was Barbie.
All right.
In the book. He ends up getting arrested, which I think our Barbie does too at the end of this season.
Yes.
But something very similar to this played out in the book.
Your shoes are untied?
Where he was like pretending to need medical attention.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So in this situation, they gave Paul that material.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then we have our credits.
Yeah, much earlier than last week.
Right. This was like 5 minutes into the episode.
Yeah, instead of like 12.
Right. So after the credits, Jim gives Junior crap for not being at the fire. And it's funny because we kind of have our, after the credits, we have this scene here, and then we end with Jim and Junior. So that's some nice little mirroring, I suppose. But he's like, he thinks the town situation is an opportunity, and he should not mess it up. He should not, let it go pass by without taking advantage of it. He finally notices that Junior is a little beat up upon. Wow, that's some great observational skills from
he was
Jim
too
here.
busy giving his son crap, like, where were you? And then he's like, oh, wait, why are you bloody?
Junior says it was Barbie, and that Barbie is insane. Jim is not impressed by this. He says he's still hiding behind his dead mother's skirt.
Yeah, and this is where we learn Mom's been dead for 9 years, supposedly.
Yes, we're going to learn that that's not true as we go along. Angie, meanwhile, who's locked up in the bomb shelter, is listening to the radio where she hears Phil broadcasting. Junior comes downstairs. She hides the radio, not sure why.
Because she doesn't want him to know she has it. She's getting information about what's going on the outside because she found this radio, like, in the supplies. But she's worried he's going to take it away, I think. So she hides it.
So, why? Because it's not like she can use it for anything.
It's her only link to anything to know what the heck's going on.
Right.
So it's all she's got.
So, he made her eggs. Aww. Junior is still attributing her behavior to the dome. What he says gives her an idea about tunneling under the domes, suggesting that they could get out from underneath the tunnels by going to the going to the tunnels and trying to get out that way.
Through the cement factory. And Junior is very quick to tell us that kids died down there, the tunnels are closed off, it's illegal to go in them. And she's like, well, you and I go in them all the time.
Right.
They go through the tunnels and they come out in, is it in Westlake where they come out?
I think so, yeah.
And, she's like, and then, we come out the other side. So, like, this is great.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. It's a logical thing to try.
Yeah.
And it kind of is funny to me that Junior's so against the idea when she first brings it up. Like, that's dangerous. Why would he say that if they themselves go down there all the time?
I am not sure, but she's finally playing it smart here by playing nice and suggesting that they could start over if they got out.
Yeah, she's like, maybe you're right. Maybe it is the dome, and maybe if we got out, things would be different between us.
Right. So Jim visits Lester in the hospital, and I think this is his only scene in the episode, and gives him crap about his actions in the last episode, pretty much setting himself on fire, and suggests that the two of them need to trust each other because the only source of information for all their misdeeds only exists in their head.
Right. There's no physical evidence left. I mean, except the propane.
Yes.
And the drugs.
Yeah, the drugs are a pretty good indication that drugs are happening, but yeah. So Barbie is being interrogated by Julia. He's basically asking him a bunch of questions, which he is not interested in answering, but he flips the script on her and gets her to talk about herself. She notices Phil, and she's like, oh, do you want to meet Phil? And he acts all sus, and is basically like, no, I'm going to go do this thing that has nothing to do with talking to Phil right now.
And I got a note here. He's about to smoke a cigarette.
Yes.
We were talking about that last week.
Yep.
Apparently he is using that supply for himself,
yeah.
even though he claimed they weren't for him.
I mean, I guess he could just be lying to Angie. I don't know why exactly. Nori. Yeah. I'm not sure why exactly, but he did for some reason. So Jim ends up rescuing Linda from her predicament, and she gives him a bunch of well-deserved crap, by the way, because, she said that she could handle the situation, and she ended up getting herself locked in the jail cell while Paul roams free.
You said that backwards.
What did I say?
You said she gives him crap.
He
gives her some crap.
That's what I meant to say. So Paul ended up taking a rifle, apparently. So
but didn't he have all the rifles last time we knew in the trunk of his car?
Yeah.
So why is it surprise that he took one?
I don't know.
Because he has his squad car. Doesn't it have all the rifles in it?
Yep. Last we knew, he had all the ammunition.
I mean, I guess when they locked him up, they took him all out of his car and put him back away.
They could have.
There we go.
All right. So she is prepared to go on the hunt, looking for Paul herself, while Jim is talking about organizing a search party. So we see Alice. Well, not Alice, because Alice is not in the scene. Caroline is specifically looking for her missing daughter, and she ends up meeting Allie Dinsmore, played by Leon Rippey. We talked about him in that podcast when we did season 1, but I'll do it again. 65 credits, including Star Trek: The Next Generation in the season 1 finale, The Neutral Zone. Quantum Leap, he was in that... Freedom, yes. And 11-23-63, which, by the way, I am now absolutely convinced that we should cover that series.
11-22-63.
That is what I meant to say.
That's an important difference.
Yes. So because we covered the Quantum Leap episode about the Lee Harvey Oswald assassination, or rather the JFK assassination done by Lee Harvey Oswald, and that series is about basically going back and trying to change those events as well. So, and it's also a Stephen King property with Leon Ripley. So I'm thinking perhaps we should actually, after we're done with this, cover that series as well.
Yeah, our friends did a whole podcast about that.
Did they? Which friends?
Albie and Chris.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
They did back in the day.
Okay. Plus he was also in Universal Soldier, Stargate, and Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
He was also in 12 episodes of Alcatraz. Which was, do you remember that show? It was an interesting series that got canceled after one season.
I don't think I saw it.
It starred Jorge Garcia from Lost.
Okay.
And it was timey-wimey, if I recall.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't actually see that series. I'm wondering if I can catch it anywhere.
Probably not. It was one of those ones they canceled and made it not exist anymore.
Right, gotcha. So they do not have a pleasant conversation here. They're clashing with the small town values.
So this scene where we meet Ollie, it hit me worse this time.
Yeah?
Because this, I think, is more timely right now with things happening in the world.
Yeah.
Ollie is, that type of person that we don't want to interact with.
Right, yeah.
He's being that small town jackass.
Right.
Really, who has a problem with Nori's family.
Yes.
And you can extrapolate from there.
Right. And also here is Roger, who's credited as town person, which is why I had a difficult time finding out who that is.
He is credited as townsman number 1, which is really funny because his name's Roger, and he is in like 12 scenes in this episode.
Right. And
they call him Roger throughout the whole thing. So why did that name not make it to the credits? I don't know. This is the only episode we see him in.
Yes. He's played by Daryl Brooker, 23 credits for him, including NCIS New Orleans, which someone else was also in, which of course included Scott Bakula. Necessary reference to the series, which is funny because the series that this is based on was actually a Scott Bakula film. It was basically this old guy who goes back to college and ends up playing quarterback for the football team.
Okay.
And in the movie, that role was played by Scott Bakula. And he was also in 3 episodes of Dynasty.
I have that as well.
Okay. So, Julia broadcasts with Phil at the radio station. She notices Junior walking in a hurry, and she decides to go out and talk to him and ask him some questions, and he does not seem very cooperative.
Yeah, he blows her off. I'm going to go back to that diner scene just for 1 second. That's the scene where Carolyn actually calls the place they're bringing Nori a school. This is where she says... we were bringing her to a nearby private school, and Ollie's like, you mean the reformatory?
Right.
So that's the reference of, that's the one time so far it's been called a school.
right.
Now, I'm curious. I remember sometime in the future there's a conversation between Nori and Angie about that place. I'm curious what they call it. Do you remember that?
I don't.
So Angie has some experience with this place, so
Right.
it's going to come up again.
Okay.
And I'm curious to see what they call it then.
All right. So back at Rose's Cafe, wherever. What's
The
the name?
Sweetbriar Rose.
The Sweetbriar Rose.
Yeah, and last week I couldn't come up with that, and I called it like 12 different things. It's the Sweetbriar Rose.
Okay. So Rose is serving Barbie at this restaurant. She brings up Angie, who hasn't been seen, but she doesn't seem too concerned about that. Jim comes in looking for volunteers to go and find Paul. Ollie and his friend volunteer, and it's interesting, the relationship between Jim and Ollie in this scene, because they have a very different relationship when we see Ollie later in the season. We get into that whole arc.
Because there's a reason.
Yeah. So Jim talks to Barbie and tries to get a little info on him, and basically recruits him to go after Paul. Now, okay, so I think, first of all, he saw him take down Paul, and that struck his interest.
Right. He said as much here. Like, hey, I saw what you did. Like,
Right.
I could use you.
But I think there's also another angle here. He's curious about the guy that beat up his son.
Right. We
He's not-
specifically
yeah.
see him noting that Barbie has bloody knuckles.
Right.
Which confirms to Jim that Junior was telling the truth.
Right.
Like, that altercation was between Junior and Barbie, and he wants to figure out who the hell is this guy? Why is he beating up my son?
Actually, I don't even think he cares about that, to be honest with you. At no point does he mention his son or in any way kind of defend his son.
No, I didn't mean that, like, he's trying to defend his son, but it's why he's curious about Barbie. Because his son was like, yeah, he beat me up.
Right. I also think there's more to it. I think he's trying to see what kind of man Barbie is.
I don't think Barbie was in his radar at all.
Right.
Until Junior mentioned it.
Of course. But also, I think the whole taking down Paul thing also combined with the Junior thing basically struck Jim's interest to the point, and he wants to know who this man is.
Right.
Is this somebody that I can use?
Exactly. And I do think that he sees a potential use to bring Barbie in.
Right.
But also, I think he might be like, maybe I shouldn't trust this guy, so let's keep him close.
Right.
Because he's an outsider. I'm trying to run the world. I got to keep an eye on him because he might be a threat to me.
Right. But also, I think him bringing him along for this hunt with Paul is kind of a threat assessment kind of deal.
Right.
Where he's trying to figure out, is this a person who's going to be my enemy, or is this going to be a person that I'm going to be used is going to be on my side?
Exactly. And I think he sees him as both right now.
Yeah.
And that's accurate.
And I think... And I actually think when we finish this episode that he hasn't really arrived at a conclusion completely. He also wants to establish himself as the alpha dog, because it colors a lot of his attitudes and the way he acts throughout this episode.
Right.
Which is somewhat inconsistent with the Jim that we had seen in the first couple episodes. All right, so yeah, like I said, this is where the episode was interesting to me, watching these dynamics and watch it play out. Bill gives an update on the manhunt, and as he does so, we see the cop cars driving to continue this manhunt. They find the police car he drove away and abandoned. Jim notices a track, but Barbie recognizes it as a dummy trail, and Jim tells him he knew Barbie would be useful.
Yeah, and I feel like I really like the way they did this, the way Phil's reporting it.
Yeah,
and at the same time we're seeing it happening. I think it shows that, like, the community's getting their groove, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're able to transmit information, and Phil has got on board with being a news site, because he was really against that before.
Yes.
And I thought that it was a really, really good job of kind of seaming these different scenes together, right? We talked about how the book is very disjointed. And I think this is one of those instances where they are doing a good job of, even though these characters have nothing to do with each other, we're utilizing them to tell a cohesive story.
All right, so Junior makes his way to the factory with Julia following him, and Linda, meanwhile, is looking for Paul. Nori and Joe is at his house with his new adopted dog. I forgot the dog's name, though.
I don't have it in my notes. I forget his name.
Okay, so she slips up and mentions her mom's again, but covers for it.
Yeah, she lies, and she's like, my moms and my pops.
Right. So this is actually in 2013, this series.
Yep.
I don't quite remember attitudes during this time in regards to same-sex relationships, but I have to imagine that it was not quite.
It was less than we are at today.
Right.
Nori is embarrassed by
Right.
her family situation, is what's happening here.
Right. I think that this is a little bit more common nowadays than it was perhaps back in 2013.
Exactly.
Okay, so Joe tells her about his parents, basically that they are on the other side of the dome. She lies about her situation, and Ben brings over some other girls to get charged up.
Yeah, so the same two girls that we met at the party.
Yeah.
And we learned that Ben may have told a few more people that Joe has a generator.
If I were Ben's friend at this point, if I were Joe, I would be really annoyed with him right now.
Right. And I'm going to point out, they were not friends before Dome Day.
Right.
Like, they met that night. He was like, yeah, you know me, we're in, like, this one class together. But they weren't friends.
So, Ben tries to put up his hand up to get high-fived, and Joe leaves him hanging. And I don't blame him, because I would be really, really annoyed with Ben at this moment.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to have these other girls come over, but, having, where
it's going to go is.
Yeah. So Jim and Barbie are in the woods. Jim is trying to feel him up.
No.
Wow.
That's not the right word.
That's quite the note I have there. He's trying to get a feel for All right, so he's trying to get a feel for him. He's not trying Yeah, he's not trying to molest Barbie in this moment. Okay. So, the four of them are together right now. They're trying to hunt down Paul.
Yeah, and Barbie confirms he was military.
Yep.
Jim says he never was.
Yep. And then Roger ends up getting shot in the leg by Paul. And Paul tells him to leave him alone. Next time he's going to aim higher. And then runs off deeper into the forest.
Yep, and Jim sends Ollie to bring Roger back to town.
That's the last we're going to see of either one of them. We're going to see one. We're not going to see Roger again, but Ollie.
Yeah, that's a wrap on Roger.
Yeah.
But he didn't die because Ollie's bringing him back to town. So he's okay. We just never see him again.
So,
and we're going to see Ollie again next episode already.
Yes. Jim tells Barbie that the two of them are finishing this thing. Now, Barbie asks a legitimate question. What's the objective here? Is the objective to take this man down, shoot him, or take him in peacefully? Like, basically take him back into the police station for judgment. And Junior, basically Jim comes back with, well, what does it matter to a guy like you? And Barbie is very annoyed with this question. Like, what do you mean by that? A guy like me.
Right. And as an audience member, I'm going to point out, we still don't really know.
Right.
Like, what Barbie's deal is. And we still don't really know that he's not a killer.
Right. So,
because we're still not sure about what happened with Peter as an audience member watching this for the first time.
Right. So, Junior, deep in the tunnels, thinks he's found a way out. But nope, the dome is here too. His flashlight explodes because, Junior was touching the dome while also holding the flashlight. And realizes that right behind him, is Julia.
Right, because she warns him not to pick up the flashlight.
He turns around and very menacingly says, "You should have followed me."
Right.
And this is very inconsistent for where we next see these characters. Because here, it seems like he's threatening her life. But that's not how the rest of the episode plays out.
Yeah, so we have a commercial break there, and then we immediately come back to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, just kidding. He's not, gonna abduct her.
Yeah, the line delivery, I don't know if this was Alexander Koch's line delivery or if this was a directorial choice here to make him seem like he's gonna kill her, when in fact what he's really saying here is, you shouldn't have followed me because now we're both lost.
Right.
So yeah, the tone of how he says that line and what his intent is, which we see in the next scene, is completely inconsistent.
I feel like it was meant as like a commercial break cliffhanger.
Yes.
Don't change the channel.
Right.
Now, I want to point out the fact that the dome is down this far indicates it's really more of a sphere. It doesn't end at the ground. We've confirmed now it goes deep underground. And that's bad for them.
Yes. Okay, so Junior goes ballistic, attacking the dome, punching it, which produces absolutely zero results. Julia ends up comforting him, and Junior is basically lost. But Julia has some knowledge. She uses a match to see which way the airflow is going so they can find their way out.
Right. She tells him about a story she once did about coal miners, and that's how she learned this technique.
And I would say that these scenes with Julia and Junior go on for a little too long and take up too much time in this episode.
Well, I think that they wanted to create suspense and tell us maybe they're not going to get out.
Right.
You know, you got to remember we know things on Rewatch that, you know, it's not as suspenseful for us as it probably would have been the first time.
Right. I got you. All right. So Linda's hunt leads her to a pig. That's my literal note here. A pig ends up coming out from nowhere, and basically it's not Paul. So
yeah. So she is searching completely separate from Jim's search party. Jim has basically written her off.
Yeah.
She's out like, I'm doing my job and I'm going to find him, where he's just like, leave it to the men.
Right. He has a very chauvinistic attitude, as well as a narcissistic attitude, and among other things about Jim that we learn in this episode. So, party at Joe's house. He's not happy. I wouldn't be either. I would be very pissed at Ben at this point. A jerk, Carter, walks in. He's played by Andrew Vogel. And I'm kind of curious if he's related to Mike Vogel.
I didn't look it up this time, but I'm pretty sure I tried finding that the first time we did this.
Yeah.
And couldn't find anything to suggest that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, Andrew Vogel plays Carter Thibodeau. He used to date Angie. And we're very quickly going to learn he's not a nice guy.
Yep.
He's going to recur through a total of 4 episodes. He's going to actually end up becoming a deputy. So let's not forget who Carter is.
Right.
Because he's going to come back.
So he also has 22 credits for him, including God's Not Dead.
He was also in Roe vs. Wade and Stakeout.
Okay, so he was in Roe versus Wade. That would seem to suggest to me that he is in a lot of religious-themed movies and television shows. Ben says he could become the most popular guy in school and get a girlfriend out of it. All right, my note here is he seemed to be doing quite fine on his own with Nori without this big party situation.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he was doing better.
Absolutely.
Before this.
Ben's just kind of that idiot sidekick friend who is
Right.
making things worse.
Right.
One thing I thought was interesting is Ben tells him that they got the Simpsons movie going on a loop. He says, they totally saw the dome coming. Because, you know, the Simpsons always predict everything. So I thought that was a cute little touch.
That is a little cute little reference. Also, he mentions not to tell Nori about the seizure because it's a total spaz thing.
Yeah, he's like, that's not going to look good if you tell her about your seizure.
Right.
Which is funny because she had one too,
Yes,
but we're soon going to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. So Junior tells Julia that he wanted to do something good today, and probably echoes his dad's words by saying, a man doesn't screw up, he stands up.
Yeah, we're seeing, like, the influence his dad has on him.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the reason Junior is so screwed up is because of the bad parenting he's gotten.
Yeah, I could see that. So
they're almost out of matches, by the way. Things
Right.
are not looking good for them.
Julia explains her story about a source sending her some documents about a politician that turned out not to be true and ended up getting her fired in disgrace. So that's an example of her screwing up and how she ended up in Chester's Mill in the first place.
Right. So she's very honest with him. When Barbie asked her, how'd you end up here? She was just kind of like, oh, you know, it's where my husband grew up, so we just came here. She's being much more honest with Barbie than she, or with Junior than she was with Barbie.
Perhaps it's because she doesn't want Barbie to think less of her, and you know, I think she's romantically interested in Barbie at this point. Definitely, there's a sexual attraction.
But also, she still thinks her husband's alive. So
right? Yeah. I mean, she can't act on it, but at the same time, she doesn't want Barbie to think less of her and diminish that potential that's there, even if she can't act on it because she's married.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that she's so honest so easily with Barbie or with Junior. With Junior, why'd I do that?
Perhaps it's because it's a different dynamic, and I think she's trying to comfort Junior.
Yeah, it fit. It's her story was helpful in this situation.
Yeah.
But it's just like, she's so open and so quick to tell this like terrible story about herself.
So I'm thinking perhaps also that she doesn't fully trust Barbie at this point. That even without Junior casting aspersions here on Barbie's character, that she's still kind of mistrustful of this stranger.
Yeah, but maybe she shouldn't be trusting Junior.
Oh, I definitely agree. She absolutely should not be because he's a terrible person.
I guess that whole "you shouldn't have followed me" thing didn't faze her at all.
No, I guess not. So she lights up a match and says, "You keep moving forward." Carter, meanwhile, has taken over Joe's house.
He's charging kids to use Joe's electricity.
Right. And Nori ends up challenging him, saying, "Hey, you can't create a monopoly. That's against the law." And Carter's like, "It's not illegal to have monopoly. I have monopoly at home. Ha, ha, ha." Okay, Carter, you're also an idiot, just so you know. But he tries to get her upstairs, but this is when Joe steps in.
Yeah, he's basically about to force her to go upstairs with him to Angie's room.
Yeah.
The whole thing is super yuck.
Yes. And this is about to cause a fight between the two of them, but the plugs in the outlets all explode.
The generator goes kaput.
Yes, but I'm not totally sure about that because we still see lights on later on, even though the generator is exploding.
like lanterns or something.
Okay. And she suggests that... Oh, well, no, I'm sorry, that's a different note.
So the generator dies, the party ends, because that's the only reason anybody's here is for the electricity. They leave. Carter leaves too.
Yep.
A little easy, I think.
He says, "This isn't over."
Yeah, but where he was a minute ago, he was basically about to
punch Joe's lights out?
Yeah, they were going to get in a fight. He was going to assault Nori. Why does the lights going out stop him?
I don't know. Basically because without being able to charge for electricity, he no longer has any kind of power here.
Sure. But he was also kind of in the middle of things.
Yeah.
You think he wouldn't have just left that easy.
I guess so. I don't really remember Carter's arc in this show very much. I know he does become a deputy.
He becomes a deputy, and I think he had a much bigger role in the books.
Gotcha.
Where all of the kids that became deputies in the books were terrible, terrible people. I'm pretty sure his character's the one that, tortured and killed a dog in the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Lovely people we're talking about here.
But I think he's the only one of the deputies in the show that we really get any insight in.
Okay. All right. So, more tunnel scenes with Junior and Julia. Junior mentions that Barbie attacked him, but lies about how that happened, and suggests that she should start asking him questions. Find out where he was actually going and what he was actually doing.
Why was he here?
And I would say that's legitimate, but this is all out of Junior's weird rivalry with Barbie.
Right.
And yay, they find their way out, and she gives him a ride home.
Yeah, and it's funny because, so she's like, "Let me give you a ride home." And I'm like, she followed him here. Did she follow him in her car? Because he was walking, and I got the impression she just kind of followed him on foot.
That was the impression I got as well.
But then she's like, "Let me give you a ride home." And I'm like, oh, maybe she followed him in her car. But then they start walking down the train tracks.
Well, perhaps they're walking back to the radio station where her car is.
And then she's going to give her a ride home.
I guess.
I mean, I feel like that's pretty far from here already.
Yeah. So Jim and Barbie continue the hunt. Barbie wants to call it, but Jim argues against it. Barbie thinks it's to show the town that he's the big man. And Jim tells his story about playing football and how a player taunted him on his team.
Yeah, so he was a quarterback.
Right, calling him Big Jim.
Because he was little. So Big Jim, the name Big Jim started as an insult. Because Jim was a little guy.
So he put the mother of all hits on him and shattered his pelvic bone. So he would prove he was not a joke. All right, so I'm going to say that if you were to do something like that in scrimmage, you would get kicked off the team, or at the very least be in big trouble.
Yeah, but it was probably how old is Jim? This was very far in the past, so nobody probably paid any attention because everybody sucked.
I guess that's
probably the 60s, maybe even earlier.
Probably, but yeah, if you were to do something like that now,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he said ever since then, Big Jim wasn't a joke, and now he wears the name as a badge of honor, and he says he demands respect and an eye for an eye.
Yes.
In other words, he is planning on taking out Paul.
So yeah, this is highlighting a difference between these two characters, though we're not really getting that much insight into Barbie.
Right.
Jim is a end justifies the means kind of guy, which is an attitude I don't agree with. And Barbie, despite the job that he had, is a man of conscience.
Right.
That Jim does not have. So right behind him, and I'm surprised nobody noticed this before.
They were very deep in conversation.
Yeah. is Paul.
Yeah, Paul snuck up. He's holding a rifle on them.
Mm-hmm.
He's about to shoot somebody. I couldn't tell which person he was threatening to shoot.
I think his gun was on Big Jim, whereas and Barbie had a gun on Paul.
Yeah, he definitely had a target, but I couldn't make out what was happening.
I think he was specifically aiming his gun at Big Jim. But who should take care of the situation but Linda, who appears out of nowhere and ends up dropping Paul.
Yeah.
And Jim,
for good.
Yeah, and Jim looks very impressed. And this is the end of Kevin Sizemore in the role of Paul. Jim talks to Lester. Oh, I guess Lester was in another scene. And asks him if he's clean. Lester said, I guess I don't remember this because it was such a brief scene. Lester says that he is.
Yeah, he's kind of annoyed they're bringing him another body. He's like, I'm not done with Paul, or with
Duke.
With Freddie. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Jim,
the bodies are piling up in this town, in other words.
Yeah. Jim then talks to Linda and apologizes for his earlier comments. He tells Linda that Duke would be proud of her. But Jim wants to give her some deputies, which is something he tried to do with Duke, and Duke was not having it.
Right. But now, here's the situation. Linda's the only police officer left in this whole town. Yes. Other than the dispatcher, Jackie.
Right.
Who we've heard name mentioned, but we haven't met her, and I don't know if we will meet her. So, a couple things. In this scene, Duke gives a line that's from the book. If I remember correctly, it's a line that was used a lot in the book.
Not Duke, because Duke is not here. Duke is
not dead. Right. I mean, Jim talking about Duke.
Okay.
He says, Duke's probably up there right now eating roast beef and mashed potatoes with the big guy.
Ah, gotcha.
And if I recall, that line was used quite a bit in the book.
Huh.
So yeah, that's just one of those moments where instances of where they're actually pulling stuff from the book.
Yeah.
And it's appreciative, you know? And people are like, oh, this story, didn't touch on the book at all. It does, just not the broad strokes.
Right. So Julia and Junior drive home. He wants her to leave out the whole attacking the dome thing and getting lost. I'm assuming that's the other part of the thing that he's trying to leave out. And she basically agrees to it. You know, what happens in the dome stays in the dome. He tells her that she can call him James, which is... I think that's an indication that Junior does, in fact, trust Julia.
Right, but he also says he hates being called Junior.
Right.
So he's opening up to her, just like she opened up to him. Mm-hmm. But you know what is funny about the whole, let's keep what happened today between us? Mm-hmm. But maybe we should tell people that the dome is a sphere because that seems important.
Yes, but I don't think that Junior wants to leave that part out. He wants to leave the part out where he started freaking out and punching the dome.
Sure, but I don't think they end up telling anybody any of this.
That's true. But, I mean, actually, Junior does end up telling Angie, but that's kind of useless because she's locked away.
Right.
Jim offers Barbie some scotch just as Junior and Julia arrive home. Junior just kind of glares at Barbie and walks off.
Yeah, so Barbie and Junior just kind of trade places.
Right. And Barbie takes a rain check, and Jim says, hey, small town, you gotta support the team.
Which is another quote from the book.
Yes.
Which is also a song quote. It's from James McMurdy's song, Small Town. And that's another one of those lines that's used over and over and over again in the book. But I don't know if it's repeated again after this in the show.
So Barbie, by the way, looks kind of skeptical of this thing. I don't know that at this point that he's on board.
Oh, he's definitely not.
Yeah. So Linda takes off.
She takes Paul and Freddie's names off of their lockers, as well as Duke's.
Right. And grabs Duke's hat and sleeps on a cot, just like Duke did.
Yeah, she's basically trying to, I think, contemplate filling Duke's shoes, which I don't think she's had a moment to really figure that out yet. This is the first time things have been calm, since Duke died.
Junior and Jim share another scene. Junior tells him about what he tried to do. Junior asks him about what he was doing with Barbie.
Oh, so I guess he did tell his dad all about the cement factory.
Yes. Yeah, he did. Okay. Jim basically cuts him down and says, let the grown-ups do their jobs.
Yeah, he's being super condescending, and then he's drinking whatever he's drinking, and he gives Junior a glass of milk, and he's like, drink your milk.
So, I'm a little confused as to what Jim is trying to do with his son here. Because in the beginning, it seems to contradict what he was trying to do in the beginning.
Because he's a terrible parent!
All right, but, what is he trying to do? And on the one hand, he kind of wants to build Junior up. On the other hand, he's totally cutting him down.
He wants Junior to make him look good.
Yes.
By, like, being present and being helpful. But he also wants to keep him, like, you're the child, I'm the adult, mind your business. Don't get involved in daddy's business.
Gotcha. So he just wants him there for appearance sakes only. And, nothing else.
Right.
He doesn't actually care about building Junior up and turning him into a man.
Right.
Gotcha. All right. So Joe attempts to, he's basically attempting to fix the generator, though it seems like there's lights on. I swear that those are not, like, what?
The lights are dim. I think it's candles and lanterns or something. I'd have to look again.
Okay. So Caroline ends up finding Nori somehow. I don't know how she ended up
I guess
here.
she's going, oh, no, she asks, how'd you find me? And she says, when something blows up, Mom knows. So she got word that there was this party and there was an explosion, and so she took a guess that Nori might be here, and she was right. I mean, remember, she's been looking for her for like 24 hours.
Right.
So.
And this is where Joe learns the truth about Nori's family situation. I'm not totally clear on how Joe is taking that information.
I mean, I don't think he cares. Obviously, Nori cares a lot more than she should. If I was Joe, I think I'd be more upset about the fact that she lied to him.
Okay, that makes sense. Nori didn't want him to know. She thanks him for almost getting beaten up for her. She touches his hand, and now they're both having a seizure.
Yeah, they're both having pink star seizures.
Yes.
So this is the very first time they've touched each other, which is weird, because they've been hanging out all day. Yeah.
No kisses, no hand holding.
I mean, even like, just walking past and, you brush your hands together. Like
accidentally bumping into each other. So Junior visits Angie to let her know that he failed. He says he beat up on the dome because he loves her, which, okay. He opens up a kit, a
first aid kit.
First aid kit. Angie ends up hiding the scissors, which I don't know how Junior did not notice that.
Yeah, he's like just kind of, I think he's all enamored in the moment, like letting her take care of him and nurse him, and she's going to clean his wounds, and she's smart. She's a lot smarter than him, and she tucked the scissors away. So,
and then we have Junior and Barbie sharing. No, we do not. Julia and Barbie share a scene. She basically starts to try to question him. He kind of blows her off.
Yep.
And he says goodnight.
And she notices that he tucks a map into his bag.
Which she decides to go digging through his bag.
When he's in the shower.
And finds a map. And that is where the episode ends. And
circled on the map is the location of Peter's cabin.
Yep.
Which I don't think we know that's what it is yet, but that's what it is. Because that's the place that's what he was doing in town, right? That's where he was going.
So, that's where the episode ends. Yep. This episode was okay-ish. I kind of found the dynamic between Jim and Barbie interesting in trying to, watching them feel each other out. Other than that, I don't really... I do like the Joe and Nori scenes.
Yeah, there's good progressive stuff here to the story, but also it was just, again, really a lot of just guns and action. And like you said, the cement factory scenes were a little drawn out once we know that nothing happens there.
Right.
It just wasn't the best episode.
Yeah.
But this isn't, an episodic show.
Right.
Either. So
even though sometimes it kind of plays like an episodic show.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in the transition.
Yeah.
Right? Where there's definitely, of course, an ongoing story, but there's also these little kind of sub-stories that happen episodically. So we had two other credited actors in this episode, and I could not figure out where we met them. There was older man, played by Bill Oodley. I think I said that wrong. He's in one episode of Stranger Things. And older woman, played by Deborah Childs. She was in Star Trek First Frontier. And I saw a picture of these two characters walking hand in hand.
That must be like a fan film or something.
I don't know what it is. It could be a video game even.
Okay.
I don't know what it is.
I'm going to have to look into that because I'm curious.
So there was a picture of the two of them. They were walking down a street, and the picture was on the fandom wiki. But I couldn't place that scene. I have no idea where we supposedly saw them. But I don't feel like they actually had lines.
Probably
because I'd have figured out who they were then, so I don't know why they're credited.
Right.
Don't get it. As far as uncredited people, bear with me. I'm going to redo a bunch of credits. A bunch of uncredited listings. Don't want to call them credits because they're not credits.
Right.
We have a nurse who we meet here for the first time. She's going to be in a total of 8 episodes. She's eventually going to be given the name of Chris, but she hasn't been named that yet. She's played by Rochelle Eichhoff. She was in 2 episodes of Secrets and Lies and 3 episodes of Sleepy Hollow. We have a townsperson who's in a total of 11 episodes, played by Carolyn Kahn. She was in 1 episode of Sleepy Hollow and the movie We're the Millers. We have somebody who, this is the only episode they're in, credited as patient/resident. I don't know what they were a patient of.
Yeah, I don't recall any scenes that take place in the hospital in this episode.
But he was Robert.
Oh, actually, it could have happened when we saw Lester in the hospital, but that was a very brief scene.
Yeah, I don't think we saw anybody other than Lester. It could even be something that was cut from the version we're seeing.
Probably.
That's possible. But this actor was Robert Hazlett. He was in 3 episodes of Snapped and 3 episodes of Snapped Killer Couples was the name of that show. We have someone credited as Mad Townsfolk, so probably in that scene at the beginning where we're arguing about what's going on with Paul. He's actually going to be in a total of 7 episodes. His name is Joe Montani. Joe was in 1 episode of Secrets and Lies and We're the Millers. I'm guessing We're the Millers must have been filmed in North Carolina because that keeps popping up.
Yeah.
And then we have only one other person, and that's somebody we already talked about. Will Smith returned.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Okay. All right. Do we have anything else to say about this episode before concluding?
That's all I've got in my notes. The next episode...
That's the pandemic episode that takes place in the hospital.
The next episode, I think it's called Outbreak.
Yeah, something like that.
Everybody's going to get sick.
Yeah.
So we're going to spend time in the hospital next week.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't this week.
Right. Yeah. All right. And that's the one where Junior basically holds everybody hostage.
It's the one where Junior's going to get a lot of progression in his story, for better or worse.
Right.
And I'm sure we're going to have a lot to say about that.
And Ollie Dinsmore was involved in this.
Ollie Dinsmore does appear in the next episode as well. Yes.
Yep. All right. We'd like to hear from you. What did you think of this podcast? What did you think of this episode? Stacie, we reached out.
I reached out on Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at TV and Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.